This is a site that I made for, along with another student who was with me in a class with Dr. McGee and Dr. Ambrose, called Education in the Arts, which is a BHP course that's sort of talking about how do you bring together the concept of education and educational communication with arts and with arts in terms of English and arts in terms of music and arts in terms of media in general. And the concept, we took one specific concept out of that, my partner and I. You can see both of our pictures down here. And the concept that we took is gamification of education. This is me and that's my partner. We worked together on this, and this is sort of our short bios. But basically what the concept was to take education and gamify it, the gamification of education, or how video games can be used to communicate education and to use education. That's where the title of the website comes from. WASD is the configuration of letters that you use if you play games with a keyboard. That's how you move. It's pretty niche and archaic. Only people who actually play a lot of PC video games will recognize it. I think Dr. McGee had to look it up when you were doing it first. My site is a lot like this. There's a banner that I've constructed with a picture of the one. I like photoshopping pictures for banners. It's like a hobby. The banner that I'm using for my Google site is there's a picture of the Milky Way and there's a human brain in the middle, and it always reminds me of a sentence, something actually James said in our class, Dr. Spiegelberg, where he said the center of the observable universe is always humans, because by definition the center of all that's observed is us. When you land on my webpage, immediately you have the introduction, which is sort of the last requirement that you had there. But in my case, the introduction is also an article in and of itself about why I think interdisciplinarianism is important and why I like BHP and what my purpose in doing the portfolio is. So it's entitled Introduction, or Anatomically Distinct but Functionally Integrated, which is a sentence that we always use in neuroscience about how different organ systems in the body are anatomically distinct. So your digestive system is different than your nervous system, is different than your respiratory system. So they're all anatomically distinct, but they're functionally integrated. None of them actually works without the other. So the classifications are just sort of what we use to make it easier for us to understand these systems, but they're not actually separate. And I make the case, or the argument, I try to make the argument anyway, that
they lied to me in junior high.
Yeah, they did. So I try to make an argument that human endeavors of knowledge are very much the same. You can create arbitrary divisions between English and sociology and psychology and chemistry and whatever, but at the end of the day, they're all matters of information that serve in conglomeration to sort of really give you one final whole that is the cultural output of our species. It seems, especially to reductionist scientists, it seems like a bit of a frightening argument, but I argue on some level, for example, that all science you do is an output of your pre-existing cognitive load. So any ideas that you come up with are based on what books you've read, what ideas you've been exposed to, what metaphors you know of. So
and all the terrible things your mother did to you when you were growing up.
Absolutely. Like, so if you read, there's a series of letters that's really interesting that was exchanged between Karl Marx and Engels, where they comment on Charles Darwin. And they talk about how everything Darwin ever wrote was so Victorian, it was so sexist and male, it was so capitalist, it was so steeped in English privilege. And when you go back and read Charles Darwin, like, a lot of that is true, but that's why it works, because that's how nature works too. And so the idea
by the
that
way,
yeah.
Marx was fundamentally influenced by German Hegelianism. He was as much a product of this as
absolutely.
Right? We're getting far afield from e-portfolio.
Yeah, sorry. So anyway,
so you're going very meta and making a case for the importance of what you call interdisciplinarianism, which sounds like some kind of
a cult. Yeah.
A cult.
I am all for the cult of interdisciplinarity.
Okay.
I actually even have one of the artifacts I have is from a course I took in philosophy of science, and I wrote a subsequent commentary called on the dangers of radical reductionism, where I push that point even further and talk about how if we want to go completely towards reductionism, we're going to become just entirely derivative as a culture. So yeah, I'm like
take that, reductionist scientist.
I'm like high.
Don't mess up our BHP program with your reductionist tendencies.
I'm like high priest of the interdisciplinarianism sector. But the other thing I wanted to show you guys.
So this is a way to show us what you can do, just sort of creatively and in terms of commentary and reflection.
So my banner up there is the School of Athens with a whole bunch of philosophers with video game characters interplaced here and there. But what I wanted to show you is one of the reasons I chose a website.
Aristotle was crying, right?
Yeah. I don't know, who knows, Aristotle might have been a video game player where he...
Yeah, you were so right.
Yeah, I said Plato would be crying, Aristotle would be thumbs up.
So, what I wanted to show you is, so I picked this medium because we were talking about originally writing a paper for this assignment for Dr. McGee's class, but then we both saw it's kind of hypocritical and self-contradictory to write a paper about how you should make education more interactive. So what we said is, okay, well, let's practice what we preach and make something very interactive that communicates the idea.
It sounds like Dr. McGee.
Yeah, and
I say it is never hypocritical to write a paper.
I thought
never hypocritical. It is always a good thing to write a paper.
Well, there are several papers built into this, just not in paper form.
They're the bricks.
And kind of the way we've structured this highlights that. We've tried to use, there's like all sorts of hyperlinks and embedded videos. In one of the tabs, if I go to science, there's actually a video game you can play right from within the website. That I've linked you to this, Dr. Spiegelberg, where this... So this video game was developed by some programmers by funding from Carolina, and what it does is it's like an actually legitimately fun video game to play that teaches you everything you need to know about how cells operate. And it does so by giving you a cell and allowing you to play with it and build different things into it. But it also at the same time comes with an encyclopedia that explains to you, both in the game and in the science, what each thing you're introduced to in the game does. And it really is a lot of fun to do, but like there's a good third to a half of a molecular biology course built into this video game that you can play in an afternoon or in 2 days. So what we've tried to do with our website is capitalize on this idea that we have this very rich medium and we can build a lot of interactive things into it.
Are those the mitochondria I saw, John?
Yeah, those mitochondria.
Just showing off the one word.
Yeah. There's videos built in. Sometimes you'll be reading, and I'm really, generally speaking, when I speak, I'm very tangential. I think you can probably tell. And what I really liked about this medium is that it allowed me to be just as tangential, because you could be reading a sentence like, on the other hand, many of the measures proposed and implemented have been ineffective. But if you click on measures, it's going to take you to an article on Wikipedia about education reform, where I specifically talk about the 1980s education reforms in America. Because when I talk about... This is
an article that you wrote?
No, this is Wikipedia.
Oh, I thought you contributed it.
I did not contribute to this, but so, whilst I didn't have either the time or the place in an introduction to talk about why 1980s educational reform in America is a prime example of why interdisciplinarianism is something we're running away from that we need to get back to, and why...
So you link someone to get more information on that, so this is a great use of hyperlinks.
Absolutely. So I'm being tangential without being tangential. Instead of putting all these parenthetical sentences that my professors yell at me for using in papers all the time.
See, but I adore that.
But there's so, usually, I get really tangential.
Because, let me explain why though. See, I'm just going to provide a counter argument, just for fun. Because when I see all these links, I feel nervous that I'm not clicking on all of them. I'm like, there's something I'm missing here that I should know. But if I click on that, then I forget why I clicked on it. Where was I before that? Whereas if I'm reading your train of thought, I can follow what you were thinking at the time. I can hold the parenthesis in my mind just as you do, and go on to the end of the sentence. But I still feel like I have the whole thing. right? Do you know what I mean?
I still
And
feel
that's
like
a common phenomenon, people getting anxious about hypertexts that
They get
basically,
hyper about it.
because what they're, many of us, and possibly not these people, many of us are comfortable with this book that had 300 pages, and you started here, and you went through to the end, and you were done, and anything that you're supposed to cover was covered in those 300 pages. And now you've got this little article that's got 20 links, and you're never done, and that produces anxiety for us,
But
and it
it's not
probably
just that
doesn't
you're never
produce.
done, it's that you don't have the satisfaction of a well-argued argument, you know, which is really, has some aesthetic and intellectual value in itself,
Mhm.
as opposed to sending you helter-skelter. This is fabulous, so I'm just,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm going to make a counter-argument.
All right. But you're into visual, Gabrielle, you're a visual, does this kind of thing ring a bell with you at all? You know, the potential of what you could do visually, or are you not there yet, or do you have other ideas? I'm just curious to know.
As in the hyperlinks, or as in the
Well, just the whole
e-portfolio?
capacity of the multimedia, platform to do all kinds of artistic and visual things. I don't know, how does that make you feel? Do you think it's sort of scary, or do you like the idea? Are you comfortable with it? How about you, Caroline?
I don't know, I've never done anything like this.
Okay, so you're reserving judgment until you get a chance to play on the ground a little bit. So different. So, but you think you?
Well, when I was in high school, with my communications class in high school, we had a portfolio where we posted all of our videos that we made and everything like that. So, I mean, this is definitely going to be way more in depth than that, because that one was just kind of posting what we've done and showing it off.
So you did a lot of video
Videos,
development in high
graphics.
school.
Yeah.
Was that instead of reading books in English class?
No, I have a communications class.
Just kidding.
So my counter-argument to what Dr. Luna was saying earlier is
Yes.
a large part of the reason that I speak English so well is because I spent so much of my high school career clicking through links on Wikipedia. And that's what I absolutely
That's
love about
not why. No.
that's what I absolutely, it was reading, and most of the reading I did was on Wikipedia.
Okay, fine.
Um,
But what if you had read books? Would you have been?
I did read books. I read books in
Oh,
addition
well,
to.
then you can't tease apart those variables, can you? Now, I think you're leaping
fair
to
enough.
conclusions, young man.
But what I'm trying to say is, there's something starting you, and even with the website that I've made here, one of the things that we try to do is keep it
Clean.
specifically modular. One of the things that we capitalized on in this medium is precisely so that we didn't want it to be like a website that you read from beginning to end, like just a book that someone's transposed onto a website.
Right.
What we did instead is it's entirely modular. So you read the introduction first, and that's where you're going to land on, and there's a conclusion at the end. But within that, there's, see all those links at the top that say theorists on education, history, science, writing, gamification, and practice, addressing the opposition. They're all different modules that are completely independent of one another. So you have no reason why you have to read the section on history and how these video games can be used in the education of history in order for the section on science to make sense to you.
And I want to just add to that, even though sort of playfully, quasi-playfully arguing with you, the real virtue of this medium for you as e-portfolio makers is for you to make the hyperlinks amongst the artifacts that you post there to show how your mind, right, is actually being creative and going meta on this stuff. It's great to have the links to other stuff that you're not going to develop in detail because it's out there in Wikipedia or wherever it might be. That's great. But really, the guts of it, from our perspective, I think, you would agree with this, Dr. Mickey, right, is the thing, he would never disagree with me here.
Wouldn't dare.
Is the, no, seriously, it's the way in which we see your mind going beyond just the sequential posting of, here's some great stuff I did as a freshman, here's some great stuff I did as a sophomore, junior, senior, but showing how, well, I took this course freshman year, then when I was a senior, I took this other course, and I was able to go look back and see how that idea now is going to be refracted through a different lens, or I'm going to look at it with more sophistication, and here's what I would say about that now. And so we do have some examples.
And let me just pause you for